Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we have a wonderfully insightful presentation by astrologer and author Carmen Schott exploring the mysteries of the 8th and 12th houses. Given the sensitive topics associated with these houses, some viewers may find some of the material triggering, therefore viewer discretion is advised. And lastly, if you wish to view our current class, workshop and webinar offerings, please visit KeplerCollege.org. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Carmen is a licensed clinical social worker, psychological astrologer, author and teacher with a national and international clientele. She has researched astrology, trauma, healing and transformation for 28 years. Carmen began her astrological work at 16 after an experience with a glowing ball of light in her doorway and began studying metaphysics and Edgar Casey. That's such a wonderful story. I'd love to hear more about that. She received her undergraduate degree in psychology from Fontbonne University in Missouri and her master's of social work degree at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri in 1999. And she is the author of 9 astrology books. And you can find out more about Carmen at Carmen Schott, and I believe that's supposed to be .com. So check out her website there. And who better to introduce today's topic than Carmen, so I'm going to pass on the baton to you.
Thank you. Let me try to share my screen. Welcome everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Carmen Schott. By trade, I consider myself a counselor and a social worker. And I also consider myself astrologer. So I use astrology as a personality tool to help others. And I'll kind of share with you, how I became an astrologer, which was a really interesting story. I was not raised to believe any of these things. And as a 8th and 12th house person myself, it all made sense when I finally learned about astrology. But before that, I felt very different from everyone in my family. I had a natural desire to understand why am I here and what if I die? And I remember being little and just kind of being really intuitive and empathic and dreaming things and just had a very vivid imagination. And I used to wake my parents up all in the night and would have these dreams and these feelings that I couldn't explain. And my parents would say, it's just your imagination, it's just your, go back to sleep. And I was afraid of the dark, I had to have a nightlight on and all that kind of stuff. And so what happened to me, how I got into astrology is when I was 16, I had a couple things happen to me that year. The first thing that happened to me was I lost a very good friend through an accidental shooting. And this is very 8th house, which I'll get into my chart here in a little bit. But at the time, I had never lost anyone. I never had anyone die. And my grandparents were still around and just never knew what that was like. And I had seen her the day before it happened. It was a tragic accident that happened in our town where they were passing a gun around, these boys, and they thought they took the bullets out, but there was one there in the chamber and it accidentally went off and it killed her instantly. And that changed my life. Losing my friend really opened me up to why am I here? Why did this happen? And all of these questions. And that same year, I played basketball and I loved sports. I'm an Aries moon in the 8th house. So I did that most of my life was shooting baskets. And I think just that focus of watching the rim and the ball go in the rim and that repetitive focus and mindfulness, I think really opened up my intuitive abilities, my spiritual abilities. I do kind of think that's a big part of it from why, I look back, when did these things start happening? It was when I really was doing concentration exercises, so to speak. And that same year, I went to bed, came home from a basketball game, went to bed one night, and I woke up one night. I always had to have my door open, always had to have my bed where I could see out, and there was always a night light. And our house was small, so my parents' room was right across from mine. And I woke up and I was frozen. I couldn't move. I had no voice. I couldn't scream or anything, but all I could do was watch. And I saw this huge glowing ball of yellow, watery light floating in my doorway. And all I had control of was my mind. And I remember just laying there thinking, please don't have it come in my room, praying over and over, please don't have it come in my room. I was terrified, and now looking back, I wish I would have tried to not be so afraid, but I was terrified at the time. And I laid there watching it for a long, long time. And it's like it eventually released me. That's the only way how to explain it, this orb. And I was able to yell for my mother. And for that point in my life, no one believed me. When I would tell them I would have these mystical, strange experiences, they'd say, oh, Carmen's being Carmen again, right? But that night, when I yelled for my mother, she saw it too. And so for the first time in my life, I had a witness to one of my strange occurrences. So she told me to go back to sleep. Maybe it's a lightning bug. And I'm like, no, it's huge. And she didn't get up and go to it. I laid there and she was yelling across the room, the hall, and said, maybe someone's shining a flashlight. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And so after that, we really got into a deep conversation that, she didn't know what it was. And the next morning, she didn't know what to explain to me. So I really got into angels and spirit guides and, the soul and why am I here? Because those two really transforming experiences when I was 16 years old. And after that, I went to St. Louis, Missouri, which was a big city near my small town that I grew up in Rolla. And I got my first astrology book, and it was Astrology, A Cosmic Science by Isabel Hickey. And I started teaching myself how to do my chart. And back then, we did it by hand. We drew them. We didn't have computers and all this stuff. So I remember doing my chart, and I found out I had the sun and Venus in the 12th house, and I had the moon, Jupiter and Chiron and part of fortune in my 8th house, all in Aries. And so I started really validating through astrology, this is why I am the way I am. This is why I have these strange experiences that no one can explain, right? And no one can even explain it to me. And I remember I would dream things, and I remember I would tell I remember telling a preacher, I was raised Baptist, and I remember telling him that I dreamed of the future. I would dream things and then they would happen. And it could be something really silly, like someone had a black hat on, white shirt, glasses, and they told me something, and the next day the exact thing would happen. It wasn't always something traumatic or a huge change, but sometimes it was. And no one could explain it to me. They're like, oh, you really shouldn't be dreaming. So I never had anyone encourage me to enhance my intuition or abilities, and no one in my life knew astrology, but it became my passion. And I started studying it, and it became such a huge part of my life. And I always wanted to help people. So around, when I graduated from high school, it was that same year, I was a little bit younger for my grade. I went away to college, and I decided I wanted to be a counselor. I wanted to be a social worker, and I wanted to work with children and teens primarily when I first started out. And I wanted to work with people that had lost a loved one, that had been through grief and that had had some type of loss in their life. And back when I was 19, I didn't know what trauma was. I didn't know anything about psychology except, the basics. And so I decided to really try to use astrology as a personality tool and a tool of self-awareness. And that's what I started doing. And I started doing charts for free, just for fun, in the St. Louis area when I was 19, back in 1993, 94, 95. And I would just do it for fun, and I would practice, and I would collect research. And all of this I'm going to share with you today is really just years of me learning from people and them sharing their personal stories with me. But also some of these stories that I'm going to share in my books are my own stories. I'm a little bit private about sharing, a ton of things, but as we talk, I will share some things that I've been through that I don't always write about or talk about, but I will share them if I feel that I need to. But there's just a lot of people that validated to me, wow, these are patterns. And these are karmic lessons and issues that a lot of people face that have planets in the 8th and 12th houses. And one of the first houses that I was obsessed with was the 12th house. And then the 8th house became my next obsession. And I always tell people, I know that all 3 water houses are important, that triad. Absolutely. But with my research, and I've really seen there's more of a similarity of experience and spiritual abilities with the 8th and 12th. They're very similar and they manifest in a little bit of a different way, but I find that these two houses to me are just my passion. So yes, the 4th house is important. I always tell people I know that, but this is where my research has mainly been. So I started working with trauma survivors. I've been working with people, PTSD, children that have lost loved ones, parents, witnessed violence, have been sexually abused, assaulted. I'm a trauma therapist, so I'm trained in all different types of trauma healing to bring into my astrology and what I do. And I've always had 2 jobs. And I just want to let everybody know, please put your questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to get through all this. And then at the end, I'm going to answer any questions you guys have. So I would love to answer your questions. I got a lot of stuff I want to try to get through, but yes, so I use astrology as a tool, and the 8th and 12th houses specifically have been my mission to help people that have these energies and these planets in these houses, and even Pisces, Scorpio energy. So I want to show you a video that is excerpts from my book, Phoenixes and Angels, and kind of what it means to be an angel or a phoenix. So let me go ahead and push play.
When we refer to others as 8th and 12th house people, it relates to individuals who have planets placed in the 8th and 12th houses in their astrological birth chart. It can also represent someone who has an abundance of Scorpio and Pisces energy. The 8th house is ruled by the sign Scorpio, and its planetary ruler is Pluto. The 12th house is ruled by the sign Pisces, and Neptune is the planetary ruler. Pluto energy is associated with issues such as power, death, rebirth, control, healing, transformation, secrets, regeneration, psychic abilities, and powerful change. The planet Neptune's energy involves spirituality, escapism, suffering, illusion, addiction, romanticism, artistic abilities, and intuition. Let's dive deeper. 8th house people, phoenixes. When planets are placed in the 8th house, the energy and life situations experienced are intense, deep, and life-changing. 8th house people are forced to experience change. The story of the phoenix in ancient mythology is an interesting tale. The phoenix is known to possess great strength and the power to overcome death. This bird destroys itself through fire and turns to ashes, only to be reborn into a completely new bird. This symbolizes the process of rebirth, regeneration, and transformation, which are all related to the 8th house. As phoenixes, people with planets in the 8th house rise from the ashes after difficult life situations. Throughout their lives, many 8th house people experience emotional deaths, where they feel like the person they were before had completely been changed. When they look in the mirror, they don't even recognize themselves anymore because they feel and think differently. They have a whole new way of experiencing life. It can be a painful process when they are forced to go through these transformations, sometimes holding on to the past, not forgiving, and refusing to let go of outdated emotions is what triggers these rebirths. 8th house phoenixes self-transform naturally after challenging experiences and are beacons of healing. The pain, heartache, and difficulties they experience turn into strengths that can be used to assist others. The strengths they develop come from their ability to release the old and regenerate themselves. 8th house people are resilient because they keep moving forward after tragedy and crisis. They are known to adapt to emotional pain and face it head on by discipline, drive, forgetting, forgiving, dying, and adapting into a stronger and wiser person. Everyone has something in their astrology chart that can be difficult. Traditionally, the 8th house has always been considered a tragic area of life, but there have been a lot of misunderstandings and fears surrounding this house. The truth is, everything that is considered taboo in our society falls into the 8th house. Sex and death, to name a few. 8th house planets can bring trauma into our lives, karmic lessons, and betrayal. But the goal of these placements is to create growth. Phoenixes are beacons of light and are full of strength and hope, destined to face loss, betrayal, and wounding as part of their journey. These painful experiences from childhood, past relationships, betrayal, and the death of loved ones have to be overcome and processed. The strengths they develop come from their ability to let go and release old energy. The energy of Pluto assists 8th house people in moving forward. They are the world's healers, therapists, counselors, and wise teachers. 12th house people, angels. When planets are placed in the 12th house, the experiences you have are mystical, spiritual, unexplained, and secretive. The 12th house is where you search to find your soul and your connection to spirit. The meaning of life and your soul's purpose can be found in this house. Diving down into the deep waters of your soul and connecting with others and emerging stronger than ever before is the mission of angels. Through experiencing suffering and feeling emotional pain, you realize your connection to everyone and everything. There is a sense of oneness that is felt and an ability to serve others on a deeper level. Dreams, fantasy, fairy tales, and illusions make the 12th house an imaginative dream world where anything is possible. Amazing artistic and musical abilities can manifest when planets are in the 12th. Experiencing the unexplained is something that comes naturally for people with planets here. Spiritual and psychic abilities help 12th house people feel a sense of purpose. It is true that they have a special mission, a mission to overcome and conquer overwhelming feelings of escaping and detaching from this world. 12th house people often feel different from others and like they are from another world. Some feel a sense of not belonging to the family they were born in. Sensitive and empathic, they feel the pain that surrounds them. They feel separate but want to belong. Compassionate and kind, they often feel a desire to help everyone. 12th house people are God's messengers on earth. We refer to them as angels. 12th house people share with us that they don't feel human. Even from a young age, many individuals with 12th house planets feel they are different from normal people. They are extremely kind, naive, and intuitive. They believe that other people are kind like them, but they find out that is not the case. Feelings get hurt easily, and the harshness of the world shocks them. Some astrologers believe that having the sun in the 12th house shows an old soul, and that this could be their last lifetime. Serving others and sacrificing oneself to heal others comes naturally. Angels who fell to earth to support and uplift the lives of others, they are destined to come out of the mist and be seen, walking in two worlds, with one foot in the spiritual and one in reality, helps them find peace. They are born with many blessings, such as spiritual gifts, psychic abilities, artistic talents, creativity, and the ability to listen to others. Their connection and oneness with a higher power is a blessing and their greatest gift.
All right. So I wanted to share that just to give an intro of what we're going to go over today. So the 8th house, we're going to start with the 8th house, Phoenix energy. And I want to kind of, kind of hit on what we talked about in the video. And I know a lot of you on here are astrologers. Some of you are in my group. Some of you are clients of mine. So thank you everyone for joining. This house, I'm starting with it because to me, it's the most intense, and we're going to be talking about a lot of, powerful things. And I'm going to be reading client experiences, client stories to you, and all of these mystical things that people shared with me along the way. So, 8th house is, the healer. It's a healing, resilient house. I remember when I found out I had my moon and Jupiter and Chiron there, there was so many books when I started studying astrology that were a little scary. And same with having the sun and Venus in the 12th. There wasn't a lot of positive uplifting things about these houses. It was really scary when I first started learning, because I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to die, and am I going to have a lot of suffering in my life, and all these things. And what I learned are there are patterns of energy in karmic situations that people with eighth house planets have to go through. And I started seeing the same patterns play out in the lives of many, many people. And I would, when I started my counseling practice, just listening to people's personal stories, and then maybe eventually later, I would do their chart. And their birth chart, they would have a ton of Scorpio or eighth house planets, or a prominent Pluto, and they would have these similar experiences. And so I call them, the resilient phoenix, eagle energy, right? As we all know. And when I first started getting into the eighth house, I really wrote an article about my own life, my own emotions, how I felt. And it was called The Mysteries of the Eighth Astrological House, Phoenix Rising. And back in 2004, I published this article, I put it online, and I had tons of people writing me and reaching out from all over the world. And this is even before we had Facebook and stuff. And I would help them. I would, do their charts via phone, and collect their stories, and they would all share with me. And I started realizing I wanted to write a book about the eighth house, and share my own personal experiences with death, loss, grief, and being a social worker, all of the different things I've seen with clients and things like that, and then share their stories and their emails. And so I self-published a book in 2010 through BookSurge, and it's called the Eighth Astrological House, The Mysteries of It, and it's out there, and it's really just my article and a series of topics that are eighth house related. And I share a lot of emails and actual stories from people that have planets in this house. And so that became my passion. I wanted to help people that had these energies and these life experiences, so they knew that they weren't alone. And so at that time, when Facebook was new, I created one of the first Facebook groups about the eighth house, and it's the Eighth Astrological House Deep Soul Divers Astrology. There's about 13,000 members today. When I first created that book, or that group, we had so many people sharing their charts and their stories, and asking for help and supporting each other. And it really, my goal of my group was to make it a support group, because I wanted people to of course help each other, uplift each other. I didn't want it to be hard. And with social media, it's hard. So I've had to limit members, situations, conversations, as an admin, to really keep it a sacred space where people can share. Because with the eighth house, as we know, there can be trauma. There can be a lot of very deep experiences that people share, and I really need to make sure that these groups stay supportive. And so those groups are out there. I'll share a little bit more at the end about them, but some key issues of the eighth house, I know a lot of you know this, is death, endings, and beginnings. And that loss of going through grief, of it's part of life. Death and birth and all these things are a part of our life, and rebirth, regeneration. There's a feeling when you have planets in this house, there's a feeling that you're going through these, emotional, mental, physical deaths in a way where your whole personality changes. And that's that Phoenix energy that I call it, and where you're reborn. And to me, this is the most resilient house in astrology. And no one ever told me that. People would scare me. Oh, you got a lot of planets there. They're in Aries, and I never really had anyone tell me there was a positive thing about having planets here. So that's my goal in teaching about these houses, is that to teach, yes, there are very difficult times in our life, but everyone has that at some point. But you can heal these things. And so that I'm going to give some tips on working with clients for those on here too, if you're an astrologer, on things that might be able to help them when you're doing a chart. And then different experiences I've had meeting people that maybe have a trigger that happens when you're doing a chart for them and they react. So I'm going to give you some tips about that too as we go. But healing abilities, psychic abilities, secrets, behind the scenes kind of energy is eighth house. People like with eighth house are private. They kind of observe, they kind of feel different from other people as well. It's the house of other people's resources, inheritances, the house of sacrifice, which we'll talk a little bit about that, trauma, loss, deep intimacy, sexuality, also business, right? Other people's resources and I find eighth house people have that business sense. A lot of them end up owning their own business or running a business or being business minded. And then it's the house of growth, of growing and overcoming hardship. And so as I started researching, this house is where I started. And I was obsessed with it because, I wanted to learn everything I could and why I was the way I was. And I always had a connection to death and to spirits and to call it ghost, whatever you want to call it. The house I grew up in, I always felt like there was an energy in there, and my parents and everybody just, oh, it's just your imagination. But no, it wasn't. I'm very sensitive to energy and I'm very sensitive to things. So I would wake up in the night, in that in-between state where I know I'm awake, but I'm not fully awake. And I would see someone standing at the foot of my bed. And then I would scream, and then I would be really awake, right? And I'd have these experiences with that. And I never understood it until I went to a fair once, and this lady told me, "You're connected to death." And I'm like, yeah, I am. But no one had ever validated that for me. I had read about this house and knew my own experiences. And that's the thing. No one can tell you that what you experienced didn't happen. I knew what happened to me and I knew what I experienced, and I knew I saw that glowing ball, an orb. I had a witness finally, but I knew that it was something special and something not of this world. And so when she told me that, I felt, wow. So I started seeing this in as a pattern with people that I meet and the charts I do and people that I've counseled through all these years, that there is an interest in death. There's a connection to death. So this is pattern 1 that we're going to talk about. And pattern 2 is sexuality, intimacy, and trauma. There's some type of trauma that eighth house people typically have. And it could be for trauma for everyone can be different. Everyone experiences trauma differently. And I'm going to give you some tips about that and here in a little bit. But like a divorce of parents can be traumatic to one person. To another person, it may not be traumatic. It may be, emotional and hard, but it's not traumatic to them. A breakup, someone cheating on you, betraying your trust, that can be traumatic to one person. Someone being abused physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually as a child, that is traumatic. There's all these loss of a loved one, loss of a parent. All of these things can be a trauma. And everyone has traumas in their life. Everyone heals and deals with them in a different way. But that is one of the patterns I see with planets here. Also, an interest in energy, a sensitivity to energy, and a desire to heal and be interested in healing things like Reiki, like chakras and auras. There's always these eighth house folks I meet, they're very interested in these things. It's like they naturally believe in them and they know it's true. And I remember when I wrote my article, I was very empathic. And I remember I used to do home visits, and I would go into homes of children and teens. Sometimes I'd have to get them foster care and things like that. And I remember I would know things like when I would go into the home, I would feel the energy and I would know if something was going on. And a lot of times eighth house people, they don't want to know. They'll say, oh no, I don't want to think that. I don't want to feel that because it's negative. It's taboo. And I would say, oh, I don't know. Why am I thinking that? Why am I feeling it? And then later it would be validated that deep, dark secret that I picked up on, the energy, was true. And that maybe someone was being abused. Maybe someone was in an unhealthy relationship or someone was in danger. I've had that happen. And so eighth house people have all validated after my article that they've had that same thing. They feel energy. They know when someone's sad. They feel and sense when someone's upset or angry or hurt. And emotionally, they connect with people's emotions and in their environment in a deep way. The hidden, unseen things, eighth house people can tap into it. And then it's also secrets. This is a pattern where I find that they have secrets that are hidden from them in a way. Some secrets they know, and they kind of mentally or emotionally, intuitively wonder about, but they never really knew for sure if these secrets or these secret things really happened, until they get older often and they find out things. And then psychic and spiritual abilities and all these things. So right now I'm working on an article where I collected about 100 different random charts. I asked people just, in my groups, if you want to share your experiences with these patterns, please send me your chart and answer these questions via audio or email, whatever you want to do, and not totally anonymous. And I've been collecting that research. So some of that I'm going to share as we talk. So pattern 1, connection to death. So these near-death experiences, I've had a lot of people with 8th house planets share with me that they have actually died and came back. And it's people that I meet through podcast, people that have never had their chart done before. And I'll say, hey, can I look at your chart? Because everything you're telling me is very 8th house. And then guess what? I pull their chart up. They have the sun in the 8th house. They have a stellium in the 8th house, right? And they have all these things. I knew a girl that was in a car accident and she died, and she saw like her spirit guide. She had this whole experience, saw her grandmother, and then they brought her back, and she was like in her teens. I've had parents with children come to me and they've shared they've had these near-death experiences, and a lot of them have a lot of 8th house, and I'll share those stories here as we go. But death is something that transforms 8th house people, and a lot of them, these are some things they share with me. My first great love died at the age of 18. I have Saturn, Mars, Neptune in the 8th. The thought of death is always with me. I cannot let it go. I am always preparing if a loved one leaves me suddenly. It's always on my mind. My grandfather died when I was 11 and we were very close. I have the sun and Saturn in the 8th. I am sure my first thought upon being born was about dying, or at least it feels like it. And then, I read your article, and it is word for word my case. My mother died when I was 19. And then just all these stories, and some of the interesting ones I found, I've had at least 20 clients tell me that when they were little, when they were a child, that they would see themselves in a coffin, and they would worry about that, about dying. And and specifically, they would see them, like, imagine that they're in a coffin and that the dirt is going on top of them. And it can be a little traumatic, right? They would dream these things, or they would just see it in their head or worry about it, right? And so it's very, very much a connection to death, is what I see a lot. And someone said, my mother told me I would laugh and play with someone at night when I was 2 years old. Lights would come on and off, and doors would open and shut by themselves. The house was haunted, and my parents saw the same man that I would play with. And so someone else, I lost my grandmother at a young age. The night it happened, I was sleeping in my grandmother's bed at one of her houses. I opened my eyes and saw 2 orbs of light floating at the foot of the bed above me. They went out the window. They told me they came to tell me my grandmother had gone to heaven. And so these are real stories from people with planets in the 8th house, a lot of planets there. And then one case example that I share when I talk about this pattern is, I remember when I was a social worker with children years ago, and I had a friend whose best friend's son was really struggling. He was 8 years old at the time. This was back in the 90s. And he would draw tombstones in cemeteries, and he was really fascinated with death, but he would also have trouble sleeping. And the psychologists were wanting to put him on medicine, and he was just a little guy of 8. And she said, can you come meet him? Can you do his chart? Can you see what's going on? And when I went and talked to him, I did his chart, and this little guy had a stellium, and I mean, like, everything in the 8th house, everything in the 8th house. And he started telling me about a man that he'd see at the foot of his bed at night. And come to find out, after talking to his mother and everybody, I said, can you tell her what he looks like? Ended up, he was seeing his deceased grandfather that he had never met, because he had died before he was born. And when the mother realized he was seeing her father, it changed her whole perspective, because a lot of doctors, and psychologists were telling, that he was, hallucinating. I mean, they want to put him on medication. And I do believe, as a therapist, a counselor, there are some things that medicine, we shouldn't use medicine always as a cure. You need to look at the whole person. As a social worker, I don't just look at the mind. As a social worker, we look at the environment, the social functions in the world, so much that interacts and affects us. It's not just our mind. So so that's a little story I share. And then my personal story, with my friend at 16, and then also that year, that same year of the orb and my friend dying in a tragic way, I had a coach that was really, really close to me. And it was that same year, and he was trying to recruit me to play for his team in another small town nearby. And he taught me how to drive. He was my driver's ed coach and everything. And he was the coach of my brother's baseball team. And one night, I remember my dad came home with my brother, and he told me that coach had died of a heart attack. I was devastated. Like, I didn't come out of my room for like 2 days, and I just couldn't believe it. And it really, really affected me strongly. And so I think these experiences that I had at a young age really changed me. And then my grandmother, I was very close to both of my grandparents, both sides, but especially both my grandmothers. And I remember my grandmother came to me in a dream, and I knew when I woke up that something was wrong. And I just knew she was going to die. And no one would believe it. I mean, that's the thing. I was always afraid of telling people, but I got to where I had to say something to my dad. And so it was my dad's mother. And I said, you need to call her. I had a dream, and she floated away. She came to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her. And then she drifted away. And I said, something's wrong. He said, she's fine. I said, just call out there. And he called, and she was fine. And this was the next morning, right? That night, she died in her sleep. My mother came and woke me up at 3 a.m. And I knew. It's like I knew it was going to happen. And so these are things that I thought I was alone. I didn't think that anyone else was like me until I started doing astrology. And I realized these are patterns that many people have that have planets in this house. I'm not alone. I'm not, I am different, and I believe we all are a little different, right? When we have planets in these houses, because we have different abilities, different spiritual abilities, which I'll talk about too, how they play out. So now let's get to pattern of sexuality, intimacy, and trauma. I have so much. I need to start talking fast because I got a lot of slides.
Sorry, Carmen. I really hate to interrupt in mid-flow, but this is a question I think that's going to come up very many times that we're going to come through. So in terms of house systems, how would you discuss the shifts? So maybe in whole signs versus certain quadrant house systems, you're going to get shifts of planets in the 8th and the 12th, that may be from the 12th to the 1st and vice versa. So what house systems do you work with, and how do you interpret
good question.
house systems? Yep.
Yeah, I use tropical placiduous house system. That's what I use. But this comes up all the time with my clients and people in my groups about, some people use whole signs, some people use different ones. So I tell people, go with what resonates with you the most, because I do believe that our life experiences should be seen in the chart. For me, placiduous is the most accurate just for me and my clients. I mean, that's what I've used. But I know there's Vedic, and I know, and I'm open-minded to that. And so if someone comes to me and they want me to do whole sign because they resonate with that, I'll do whole sign for them. If someone is, Vedic, I don't know Vedic. I know the basics, so I'm not an expert. So if they come to me, I will refer them to some of my friends. I have a very good friend in India that was an astrologer, and I would refer people to him, and he would help. So yes, I do placiduous. So a lot of this is from the tropical placiduous. But great question. I always tell people, if they're like, I feel this fits me better, then I've had people that I've done the chart my way, and it may shift things a little bit, and they've said, Carmen, I think that I like this better. I've had a lot of clients say, even though it may change some of those planets, and I don't have a stellium there anymore, but I still have my sun or my moon or whatever, they said this does fit. And so I go by what fits for you. I'm not going to tell you only this is the only way. You know what I mean? Because everyone has their own experience. But I would look at your life experiences, because the chart should show those patterns, those instances in your life at some point. And it's another example I give before we move on to the sexuality thing with the death energy. I'm very careful how I say something to clients when I'm looking at their charts, okay, especially 8th house people. And because people can get triggered, and there's a lot of deep things people share when you do a chart with them, and I want them to be okay. And I'm going to give you some tips and skills if you're doing a chart for an 8th house person and they get triggered. And I'll give you some examples of things that I've seen with people with 8th house plants, that it can come out of the blue. Something will just hit them and they'll remember something that they didn't remember before. And so there's some really basic tips and skills I'm going to give you that you can do in the moment to stop the reading and to get them grounded and to get them settled so they can feel better to go forward. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But I had a friend of mine that was friends with my husband. This was years ago. And they were over at our house, and he knew I did astrology, and they were kind of interested, but they didn't really believe in it. And I pulled his chart up, and he had a stellium in the 8th house, and he was a Scorpio, just a ton of planets there. And I asked him, have you ever lost a loved one, or, had anyone die that was close to you? And he said, no, never, I know no grandparent, nothing. He said, no. And I remember it kind of worried me a little bit. And I didn't say anything to him, because you got to be careful what you say, because I try to let people share with me first. And I don't just say, I may say, hey, some of these energies and patterns, this is what people tell me. And then they'll validate, typically. So there's a way that you cancel and can get savvy with bringing up some things that you might see in someone's 8th house, right? I always say, have that inner knowing, that listen to your gut, and if it doesn't feel right to say it, don't say it. Just be, and I'll feel like that. If there's something I know I'm meant to share, I'll know I'm meant to share it. And so use your intuition, also when you're doing some of these deeper discussions with things. But anyway, when I saw it, I didn't say anything to the time, but later on, he ended up, a couple years later, his wife died unexpectedly, and she was young, and he was left with his son. And I remembered when I did his chart, and it just broke my heart. And I ended up helping him through a lot of things, and he's remarried now and very happy and doing great. But I went to the funeral. I spoke at the funeral. I helped him grieve. My husband had been deployed at the time and wasn't here. He was in the military. So I was his kind of person that helped him through all this. And he said, I know that you knew something when you did my chart and you didn't tell me. And I said, I didn't want to say anything, you know what I mean? And I didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. I just knew that there's usually some type of a loss, that changes you. And so that's kind of my story there. So as we get into pattern 2, let's see what time it is to keep up, sexual trauma and intimacy. These are some issues. The first person I ever loved used me for sex. When they dumped me on my birthday, I never thought I would forget or move on. I was broken, depressed. I felt like a victim. It took me many years to heal this heartbreak. It was the first person I ever trusted to have sex with or be vulnerable with. I regretted it, and that caused a pattern of attracting these types of men. And then my sex drive is all or nothing. I can go long periods of time being celibate, never interested in intimacy, or only attracted to certain people. And it's rare to be attracted. And this is kind of a pattern I hear from a lot of 8th housers, that sexuality is either, it's like there's a lot of interest in sex and having sex and being open about sex, or there's a fear of intimacy. There's a restriction of sex. So it's like all or nothing. There's like that Scorpio, all or nothing energy is so big, right, with this placement. And so some of the things that can manifest from repression, the 8th house is known to repress energy and to hide and to hold on to things, right, for a little too long. And so that's when we go through the rebirths, but holding on to the past, denying our pain, not allowing ourselves to feel our emotions, anger, irritability, not knowing how to express anger or turning anger inward, can create health problems, right? The mind-body connection. There could be sexual abuse in your life, or that it affected you in some way. I've had a lot of people come to me with 8th house planets that said, I always felt like I might have been abused. This is what they tell me, but I don't remember. And I'm like, well, I said, if you don't remember, then there's really not much we can do, except, there's things you can do Like you could do hypnosis. There's certain things that people, they struggle with sexuality, and they think that maybe I was abused. And I tell them, it doesn't mean you really were abused. It's the energy of the eighth house sometimes, right? That, some people do know they were, and they remember. But some people feel like, why do I have an issue with sexuality? Why do I have an issue with trusting people or being vulnerable? And it can be rooted in many things. But these are the kind of issues that eighth house people are going to share and that they feel, and with trusting different people. So this is probably the most intense two patterns here, with loss of a loved one and with the sexuality thing, because eighth house is taboo. This is stuff that most people don't feel comfortable talking about at all, especially with their friends and family. So if you have clients that share with you, I really recommend some tips I'm going to give you. And give them tips is take time to heal, forgive others, releasing the past, talk to a counselor, a friend, a spiritual advisor, talk to someone about your thoughts, your fears, your feelings, get them out of your body. Because eighth house people, we tend to repress and hold on, and then we either explode, or we get physically sick, or we get depressed, or we get anxious, and we have to be reborn and have a death rebirth experience is what makes us heal and transform out of that as a new person. And this can happen throughout our life. These rebirth and deaths, these experiences of, I don't even know who I am anymore. And I've had that happen my whole life. Like, I just wanted to give all my possessions away and get rid of everything. And I've done this before, where I've just given clothes away, given everything out, start fresh. Like, whatever you can do to feel lighter, whether it's donating something, getting, changing your possessions, or, or just going out and screaming in the woods, yelling at the top of your lungs. These are tips I give people. Go scream in the woods where no one's going to hear you and yell and let the anger out. Writing a letter to yourself, writing a letter to the person that betrayed you or hurt you, and then burn it. Okay. Getting it out of your mind and body. These are all, trauma healing tips. But working with a trauma therapist, and learn to trust again, and energy healing. A lot of eighth house people are naturally interested in energy healing. So they tell me that they're Reiki masters. They're trained in this stuff. And that's the thing. Eighth house people become wounded healers. They become the healers for other people and help them through their stuff. And so these are all things that you can do to help clients. And then the pattern 3, we talked a little about energy, feeling energy, sensitive to energy, picking up people's emotions, their auras, empathic, attracting people that have problems, that have emotional, unhealed, traumatic experiences. Eighth house people tell me all the time that they'll be in the grocery store. Ever since they were little, people will come up and tell them very deep, intense information, like very secretive things. Or my husband just died. I'm being abused by my dad or my mother, these things. And so they become these little mini psychologists and counselors when they're young. I mean, it starts in middle school, high school even is when it started for me. And I just felt like, that's why I became a social worker, really, because I thought, what is it about me that I'm attracting people that want to share these really intense things with me, right? And now I know I'm not alone. It's that eighth house Scorpio energy, right? Because it's like they attract people. It's like people see their light and they know that they're going to understand. It's like people sense it. So they approach eighth house people and they want to share all these things. And so a lot of them go into energy healing and energy work and rebirthing and all these different fields, psychology, where they really help people heal. And they use their own pain to be a wounded healer, so to speak. And so I'm not going to read all of these, but here's some. I'm sensitive to energy. People share their problems with me. I've always believed in Reiki, acupuncture, angels, healing. When I do Reiki on clients, I connect with their deceased loved ones. They show me things to tell the person receiving the energy work. I also see and pick up clients' memories, things stored in their body that they have not remembered. Sometimes I am led to share this with my clients to help them. And then just sensing the mood. I remember when I would be in a group of people, and I think this is really not just my my 8th house, but my 12th house sun and Venus, I would have to protect my energy. I was so wide open and I did not have boundaries. And that's something I had to learn. And we'll talk about that with 12th house, but I had to learn to have boundaries. And so the biggest thing that happened was I would visualize a bubble around myself when I was in a group or at a meeting at work or whatever, where nothing could penetrate my aura. Or I would visualize a mirror where everything that came at me bounced off, just protecting myself. These are different tips that help me because I was so sensitive to people's energy. Like I would be drained so quickly when I was around people. So there's certain tips and skills and things you can do, grounding exercises, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, mindfulness, meditation, getting out in nature, breath work. There's all kinds of things that can help you protect your energy. When you have planets in these houses, it's very important. And so this next pattern that I see with 8th house people, psychic and spiritual gifts. A lot of intuitive, empathic people. They draw people with problems. Again, we talk about this. They dream things that happen. They know things. They have this gut instinct. I dream things. Both my grandmothers came to me in dreams before they died. It's just amazing, all of the stories I hear. And one of the 8th house people, I call him, he's a Phoenix and an angel, is Edgar Casey. And I use him as an example because his sun is in Pisces in the 8th house. And he's got a lot of Pisces energy in his chart. I think they're all in we'll look here in a minute, 8th and 7th. But, I started researching him when I was 19 and his books and on astrology and dreams. And he had this intuition. He would go deep and channel from the Akashic records, so I got trained in the Akashic records. And I was so interested in all this because I realized what's in the Akashic record is in the birth chart. It mirrors, they're connected. And so all of these things, it's my passion to learn. But Edgar Casey said, astrology's fact, but there's no greater power over man than his own will. And that's true. We have these patterns and we have these situations in life and karmic learnings that can happen. But we have the power to control our mind and our actions to overcome these things. We're not a victim to circumstance. Yes, I believe certain things are meant to happen and we're meant to go through it for a reason. And as an astrologer, I've seen this with thousands of clients. And there's no doubt in my mind that astrology is real. It's fact. But we are powerful to overcome these energies. Astrology is energy. That's all it is. And when you know these energies and you're able to get smart about it, and you can learn tips and trades, right, that help you overcome or prevent some things or learn something and then stop doing it. That's what happened to me. I had to learn boundaries. I had to learn to not trust everything someone told me and be so naive and have rose-colored glasses on. Okay, that's 12th house. So I had to learn that the hard way. But Edgar Casey, he fits the patterns we were talking about. He saw the spirit of his deceased grandfather. It approached him. He lost his voice and he was for a long time he couldn't talk, and he was put under hypnosis and given a remedy that helped him get his voice back. He predicted many world events, many world wars. He was like called the American psychic of the time, back then. He helped thousands of people with medical intuitive information from their soul records. And he was a Christian. He was a minister, and he would start talking about astrology and all of these things when he was asleep in his trance state, called hypnosis, which is very Pisces, 8th house sun, right? Here's his chart real quick. North Node Pisces, Mercury, Saturn, Pisces, Venus in Pisces, but that 8th house sun there, I think it's really interesting. And so I'd like to use him as an example because of all of his experiences. And then pattern 5, secrets and hidden things. So a big thing with the 8th house and 12th house, both, is they rule secrets. Now, I find that 8th house secrets manifest differently. I've seen that it's like the 8th house person knows that something happened or senses there's something wrong, but they don't always trust themselves, or they're told, no, that didn't happen. So like, well, I kind of no, it did. But they're like, no. And an example would be, I knew many clients that kind of thought that their parent had an alcohol issue. And they would even say, hey, Mom, I know Dad's drinking too much. And the mother would say no, and would defend them, be codependent. No, they're fine. But that eighth house person always knew they were right. And so it's secrets that the family keeps sometimes that come out with this house. And I've seen this in my own life with my family and with these different things. And it's like, why don't you talk about this stuff? It's like taboo to talk about the family secrets, right? So some of these examples are, I had a lady that told me that she never knew, she always felt like she was adopted. Like she just felt like her parents weren't her parents. And she remember when she got older, she found some evidence of it, and they finally admitted to her when she was older that they weren't her birth parents. But her whole life, she thought they were her parents. But she kind of knew. She told me, I always kind of knew, but I doubted myself, right? And so that's the kind of secret sometimes with the eighth house, that it's like Pandora's box opens, and it's like Pluto energy. It slowly kind of reveals the hidden things, right? Where with the 12th house, the secrets are more hidden, like totally illusion, where you don't see them clearly at all. Where the eighth house secrets, I find that people really see them. And so I had a lot of people share with me secrets, these secrets that were eighth housers. And like someone says, I have many secrets that very likely remain hidden. I have always been a private person, and I have loved hidden secret knowledge. In a few close relationships, my secrecy or need for privacy has been considered problematic. I guard my own secrets to the highest level of security. My neighbor's brother sexually abused me starting when I was age 7. I did not understand or tell anyone until I was in my 40s. And then I became a sexual assault advocate, helping men address abuse and heal. These stories go on and on. I knew my father had a drinking problem, right? Addressed it. No one would admit it. This one lady, I was married for 15 years. I came home. She shared with me, found her husband in bed with another man. Her whole world was shaken and destroyed. She has never been the same, but she completely dedicated her life to being a counselor and helping other people. And that's what a lot of eighth house people do. They become healers. And in this energy of rebirth and transformation and regeneration, these are tips here. Embracing change, letting go, forgiving, learning to do all these things. And these are, more stories. I'll make sure you guys get the slides and you can, read through clearly. I'm going to try to get through these quick so we can get to all the other cool stuff I have. But you can read some of these stories, and some of these are in my book. Some of them aren't, but repressing things again. A lot of times people with eighth house plants it can be a heavy energy at times. And someone wrote, there are times I feel like I can't feel anything at all. It's like I'm drowning in dark water. Then eventually I'm able to swim to the surface to get a new breath. I go through emotional ups and downs. I often deny my feelings, stuff them deep down inside, and have trouble talking about them. These are kind of patterns I see with eighth house people. They feel so deeply, and it's that Scorpio energy. And I hear this from Scorpio people as well, that they don't even have the words to just explain what they feel, because it's such a deep, intense type of feeling. Okay. And so I'll move on to other people's resources and inheritances. This is something a lot of people ask me about with this house. This is my grandma and my daughter when she was little. So with all my eighth house planets, I used to feel guilty and wonder, why my grandparents helped me so much. Because, without my grandparents, I would have never went to college. I would have never had financial help to do a lot of things that I did. And so my moon is in the 8th and my Jupiter conjunct. Okay. And I really benefited a lot through my mother's side of the family. I find that when the moon is there, you kind of, really connect with the mother's side. And when the sun is there, it can be the father's side. Now, inheritances isn't always material. I find that sometimes it's a spiritual ability. My grandmother used to dream things that would happen, and I had the same thing. And I feel like I got that from her, and she would share with me. And I never knew she did this until I was like in my 20s. And then we would talk every weekend about this. And she had dreams her whole life, but never kept it secret. And so benefiting from other people, having inheritances or debts. It could be debts as well, like property. And it's also kind of your partner's house, your partner's debts, your partner and you and your goods together and your resources and what people sacrifice for you, what you sacrifice for others. Maybe it's your children. Maybe your parents or your grandparents sacrificed so you could go to college, so you could have a car, so you could, they could see you be successful because they didn't get to do that. There's all these energies of, and I've seen real inheritance happen with these natal planets and also with transits, which we'll talk about a little bit too. So transits can also trigger some things as well when these planets transit through the 8th house. But it's just important to see that sometimes 8th house people feel like they have to sacrifice. And what that means is they feel like they have to give something up or for their life to be better. And it could be, maybe they're in love with someone they can't be with. Maybe they're not allowing themselves to be happy in their future, in their present. They have to let it go. They have to completely let that die and be reborn. Paying a price, karmic destiny, karmic burdens, letting go of something you really, really want, allowing change in your life, giving up things for the greater good, for your kids, for your family, for your spouse, for your work or whatever you do, spiritual responsibility, and releasing the past. This is big with the 8th house. And I'm not going to get into all this, but this will be in the slides. These are just people with the sun in the 8th. And these are people with the moon in the 8th. And I want to make sure I get through this into the 12th house. So planets in the 8th house and transits. I'm probably going to skip through these pretty quick. So the biggest thing is, because we only got till 4, so I got about an hour. I want to get to the 12th house. But the sun in the 8th, there's a lot of those energies I talked about with being deep. The sun there kind of shines a light on secrets and hidden things and interest in psychic things, astrology, psychology, all these things. When the moon is there, there's a very deep emotional intuition, a very, very sensitive nature. Mercury there, they like to research, deep dive, right? Go into things and think as I'm talking about this, you can look at the transits. Everyone's going to have planets transit the 8th house at some time in your life. And I'm just going to hit on a couple learnings I had here with the outer planets, especially because they're there for a long time and they really mess with your life in a lot of ways and bring change. But it's all meant to be. And I'll share a little bit of what happened to me when I had some of these outer planets. So let's look at Saturn. When Saturn is in the 8th house in the birth chart, there can be, this feeling of restriction, of, it can be a heavy energy of, it's hard to even express what people feel and think. So when I work with a client with Saturn here, I really try to get them in touch with their emotions, whether it's music, whether it's looking at videos of their kids when they're little or whatever it is to help them feel. Because 8th house people need to feel emotions and they need to release them. Because we tend to get them blocked, in different areas, whether it's the throat chakra because they're not speaking or their heart chakra because they're not letting themselves feel or express their emotions. So with Saturn there, and when Saturn transits that house, it tends to bring up a lot of learning, a lot of healing with 8th house issues, with loss, grief, healing that, traumas, things come up, when planets transit the 8th house. I survived a Uranus through the 8th house transit. Okay. People that have it in their natal chart, it's always unexpected things happening and growth and experience. And they can be very, just have these mystical, visions and dreams and flashes and of intuition and things like that. But when it went through my 8th house, I knew I need to be careful because I have a lot of Aries on my 8th house when I'm driving. Well, I had a car accident. It totaled my car. I had a back injury from it. The only thing I had though at the time when I got out was a seatbelt burn, but the car was totaled and I was on a work trip too. I was traveling when it happened and I didn't hurt at all because I was on adrenaline. until about a month later. And I had a back issue that I was in a lot of pain for about a year. That same year, I lost several loved ones, people close to me, my grandmother, a couple friends of mine unexpectedly. And so there was a lot of these unexpected changes that were eighth house issues, those patterns, right, that I had to live through. And now it moved into my ninth house, so I'm very happy. But I survived that transit, and I know that it made me stronger. There was a time during that transit where I thought, how am I ever going to get through this? And I remember telling myself, I remember I was walking and I kind of heard this voice in my head, how else will I make you a Scorpio? And I started laughing, because it's true. If you don't have struggles and you don't have loss and these things, you're never going to grow stronger, right, as a person. And so these are challenging placements at times, but they're really meant to get us into our soul mission and to get us where we need to go. And so Neptune, spirituality, I find people in Neptune here are really interested in different levels of consciousness, like hypnosis. They need to be careful with drugs and alcohol, some caution there, because they're so sensitive to medication and energy and other people's emotions and things like that. And it makes them, deeply, mystical and all these things. And then Pluto is in the ruler, right? Pluto rules this house. So everything with Pluto is about power and rebirth and control and sexuality and secrets. And I find that these people don't like fakeness. They don't like superficiality. They like, they're strong. People are intimidated by them sometimes because they have like, don't mess with me kind of look on their face, because they're survivors, right? And a lot of psychologists and therapists and energy healers have this placement where they work with people, death doulas. I know several people that have told me they are death doulas. They work in a hospice. They help people cross over when they're passing away. They help their families, and a lot of them have Pluto in the eighth house. Okay, I've seen that kind of pattern. And then these are just some personal tips here. Allow yourself to feel your emotions. These are tips to tell clients. Help them release the past and forgive, and talk about that and work on that. Getting counseling, going through some type of trauma therapy, EMDR, cognitive processing therapy. These are all things that I'm trained in, but these are things that they can learn more about and find a specialist that can maybe help them heal some of these traumas. QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique, can really get to the past lifetimes, past patterns that may be affecting them. Reiki, energy work, mindfulness, grounding exercises, acknowledging triggers, knowing what their triggers are, and helping them connect to their body. Because when you're doing a chart for someone that has experienced an eighth house, like we talked about, things are going to come up. Or if someone has a transit going through their eighth house, they're gonna be feeling it, and they're going to want to share it. And so this is a short little video. I'm going to go ahead and show it. It's just a basic mindfulness technique that I do with people when I'm doing a chart. If they feel if their energy's out of whack, if they start crying, if they're really emotional, they can't breathe. I have a couple techniques I'm going to show you. So let's look at this one. Very basic.
Fly with Abel and Phi. Let's take a journey into our inner world using our imaginations. Let's place our hands on our eyes and imagine the sun on our skin. Let's bring our hands to our side and imagine ourselves as a big, tall tree. We are grounded to the ground, and we are absolutely free. Now, gently raise your hands and imagine there is wind blowing, and it sways you from side to side. You gently move in a beautiful dance, swaying with the wind. You are one with the wind. Take a deep breath in and then breathe out. Feel that you are getting strong inside. And as you get stronger, the wind gets stronger, swaying you even harder. As you dance the gentle dance with the wind, You stay grounded and strong, just like a tree. Now imagine the wind is slowing down, and as it slows down, imagine your body getting stiller and calmer. As the wind quietens, you breathe in the peacefulness deeply into every part of you. Life is so good, and you feel peaceful. Take a moment just to feel gratitude for all the love and caring that surrounds you. It's so amazing. Give yourself a big stretch, and you are ready to take on anything.
So these are just little tips, and you can research things you can do while you're doing a session with someone that has trauma. And the biggest thing that happens for clients when I'm doing their chart is that they'll cry. And I've had so many people say, why am I crying? I don't know why I'm crying. And the thing is, tears reduce pain. This is a good thing. If someone is crying when you're doing a chart, don't panic. I would take a break and I would have them, connect and do the mindfulness exercise. And then I would ask them, what are you feeling? Let's talk about it. It's okay to cry. Just validate to them, it's okay. I've had this happen hundreds of times when I'm in the middle of a session and they can't even talk because they're so emotional. And you got to have them ground themselves before you can continue. Okay, you have to. And talk to them that tears are healing. This is a good thing. Just let it out. And then you can do just a basic meditation with them. Have them breathe, right? Have them breathe and just breathe with them. Breathe in for 10 and hold it. Breathe out for 10 and hold it. And this is what I do with them. And then here's like an emotional thermometer thing you can use. And there's different tips. I'm going to have videos in here you can go back and watch because I know I'm running out of time. I'm going to have to get going. But you'll be able to go back and see some of these things if I don't touch on them. But you can get them feeling where they're at. Are you a 10? Are you out of control? Are you not breathing? I mean, I've had people have a panic attack in person with me. I've had people where I've had to get them to a doctor. So it happens and it's okay, but you need to be prepared and know a little bit of tips and what to do in a crisis, which 8th house people are typically good in a crisis. That's another thing I forgot to mention. But so when someone needs something deeper, it's okay to stop. And this is a technique that I just use this like the past 3 months. I've used it like 5 times with 5 different people. So I had a past client FaceTime me literally live and was crying and not okay. And I dropped everything. It was in the middle of the day. I had no idea they're going to call me. And I'm like, okay, just sit and take a deep breath. I want you to do this happening technique. So this is called self-happening technique. And this is, what you do is, I'm just going to show you, it's all about touch. And I have some videos in here. I'm not gonna have time to show them, but you just rub your hands like this, have them sit and rub their hands and breathe. And this is for 8th and 12th house people. This is for both. And this triggers the part of the brain, the amygdala, that says you're safe. You're okay. That fight, flight, fight response. It calms the person in the moment. And then a gentle hug, like you're hugging yourself. You just you have them move their hands, and you can do this on yourself. This is a self-healing. You can have a client do it. And this is what I had her do. And breathe as she's doing these motions. And then what you want to do is you want to touch your face. This part of the face is very sensitive. And you just have them do these 3 motions. This is all it is. And you breathe. And you just continue until they're calm, okay? And you can do it on yourself. I mean, I do it on myself all the time, especially if I'm anxious. I'm a Virgo, so my stomach hurts. I get anxious. I get nervous, especially before doing a training like this. And so you'll see me doing it at work. I do it all the time just to calm myself. So that's a brief technique that you can do with anyone. And it's body awareness, because the body holds all the trauma. It's the body and it's the brain. The brain has said, I'm in danger. I'm in danger. And that's why we have these reactions. And so there's a way to untrain that. Okay. And this is one simple tool. And then, of course, you know, Dr. Bessel, he has a lot. He's a trauma specialist. He calls it body scanning, and that you want to be like a wet noodle. You want to make every muscle needs to be relaxed. So wherever you're holding tension, you need to scan your body, have them scan their body. Where are you hurting? Where is it tense? Breathe, right? Have them breathe. Have them talk about where they feel tension in their body, right? And then you can give them referrals. Okay, if you're not a therapist or a psychologist, counselor, or licensed, you can give them referrals to get hypnosis, EMDR, cognitive processing, Reiki, energy healing. I refer everyone to get energy healing. Everyone I work with, I tell them you need to find someone locally that you can do some energy work to move the energy and those experiences out of your body, and to cry and let it out. I mean, when you get energy work, I know those of you have, you cry, it just comes out, right? And then doing grounding exercises, which is what we did, that tree meditation. Okay. And this is it. It's like, I am not the cause of another's violent behavior. I'm worthwhile. I'm human. I deserve to be treated with respect. I can decide for myself what's best for me. I am not alone. I can always ask for help. And this is the thing. I don't have time to show the video, but I do have a video on here that goes through those techniques that I just showed you. And it goes into detail of the research that Dr. Truitt has done with trauma survivors. And she is an 8th house person herself and lost her fiance to a tragic accident before they got married. And she's a psychologist. And after that tragic accident, she struggled, and she developed this happening touch technique. Okay. And so you can go on YouTube and find all her videos. Okay. And that's what I recommend you do. And I'm going to get into the 12th house real quick. I'm going to get through, and then I want to have time for questions, and got a good 30 minutes. So the 12th, I'm going to do like 20 minutes, and then we'll do Q&A. So you can ask me anything about the 12th house, if, you know, since I'm going to have to get kind of through it quickly. But I started researching.
Take your time, Carmen. Such a wonderfully insightful presentation. So don't worry about time. Just go as you need to.
Are you sure? Okay, thank you.
No
I know I'm going to keep you all day, so I'll try to wrap up by 4:15 for sure. How about that? Let's do that. The 12th house, this was really a part of my passion. I had my sun and Venus in the 12th house, and I started realizing in my own life and in the lives of others that had the sun there specifically, that there was an absent, missing father figure issue. There was a feeling of not having a parent. And sometimes the father was in the home and the parents were still married, but there wasn't a connection. There was like an absent, missing feeling. Sometimes the father maybe traveled a lot for work and just was never home, never went to your ball games, or, you know, whatever. Sometimes the father wasn't in the home at all and maybe passed away, or the child never knew their father. I started seeing this pattern in college when I started doing charts for people in graduate school. And these were all social work people, right? They were getting their MSW. They meet me at Panera Bread, and I'd do their chart for fun to practice. This is before I had a business, and I never charged. It was completely free. And I just would see these patterns, and they'd start to cry. How did you know this? Yes, I have a father issue, you know, and most of them have that placement. So I wrote an article, The Sun in the 12th House Suffering in the Father, put it out online, and had all these people writing me about it and sharing their similar feelings. And I find with this placement, though, that as people get older, they get closer with the father or that parent figure if they're still alive. And that is the case for many people I talk to. They're like, yes, while I was growing up, I never had talked. My father didn't give me fatherly advice. My father never told me they loved me. They were never there for me. And so there was a tendency to get in unhealthy relationships with people, especially men, if it was a female, because they didn't have that role model, or they didn't have that connection to the father. I remember when I had my chart done for the first time, I was 19. I went to somebody and they said, your son is in the 12th house. Anything you put before God will get taken away from you, quote. And I thought, oh, wow, you know, and it really bothered me. But it scared me, honestly. And I thought, oh my gosh, what the heck? Because I was always spiritual. I always was spiritual and believed in God and these things, and a creator, universe, whatever you want to call it. And but that scared me. And I realized the things in my life later on that it was true. Because when you're a 12th house person, I call them angels, it's like they're born with a special mission, and they're meant to be spiritual. They're meant, and I think that sun placement there, it kind of happens to make you realize who your true parent is, which is not your birth parents. We're all souls here learning. It's the creator. And so there's that suffering that comes through those that relationship helps you connect to a higher power. And then Venus in the 12th house, I have a lot of videos out there on YouTube about this one. I lived this, I learned, and I became stronger. Now I try to help other people that have these Venus in the 12th to have boundaries, and to realize, there's not always a soulmate or a twin flame out there. Sometimes you have to be your own soulmate. You got to love yourself. And so I have a lot of that in my book about learning that until you love yourself as a 12th house person, you're not going to find that kind of love from other people, because we love unconditionally. 12th house people love in a very mystical, spiritual, romantic, idealistic way. And we'll talk about that. I started a 12th house group similar to the other 8th house. And this is my book, Phoenix's The Mysteries of the 12th House, Fallen Angels. It came out last year. These are key issues with the 12th. Escapism, lack of boundaries between yourself and others, idealism, romanticism, psychic and mystical experiences, confinement, monastery, seclusion, secrets, service to others, addiction, cosmic consciousness, suffering, loneliness, solitude, privacy, compassion. I'm going to throw dreams, psychic abilities, spiritual gifts. I'm going to throw that in here. So these are some of the key, traits I see with this placement. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the patterns. A lot of the patterns have to do with, this is really cool. I had selected maybe 50 random charts of people. And I've had thousands of charts I've looked at, but if you randomly select just by planet placement alone, we're not talking about aspects here. I'm just talking about the energy of the planet in the house. 95% of people answered yes to all of these patterns. Absent, missing parent, a feeling. It could be a feeling that there was an absent, missing parent. It doesn't mean that there really was, but they felt like there was. They felt different from others. That's why I call them fallen angels. It's like, it's not a bad thing to be a fallen angel. It means that they came to this earth and they know they're not from here. So from a young age, they share with me that they felt like they were alien, like that they were adopted. I've had so many people tell me they used to ask their parents, am I adopted? I'm not like any of you guys, right? And that's a very common pattern of energy that manifests with these 12th house energies. Psychic dreams. So many people in my 12th house group dream things that happen. And I remember I used to think I was so different and alone and isolated until I started, researching astrology and doing these groups. And everyone in there dreams things. I'm like, shoot, we're all 12th housers. We're all dreamers. And so everybody that I talk to has had at least a dream once in their life where it happened. Some people are more vivid dreamers. They're more lucid dreamers. They wake up in their dreams. And I do that. I'll wake up and I'm able to control my dreams. I can't control it very long, because then my mind realizes I'm awake, and then I panic. And then I start going down into the water in the dream and I wake up, right? And so everyone shares these similar experiences. Astral travel, feeling like they're traveling out of their body when they sleep. Empathic abilities, feeling people's pain, absorbing other people's feelings. Secret love affairs. This is a pattern that gets a little controversial, but many people with planets in the 12, specifically Venus, but others as well, have had these secret love affairs, these secret feelings where they just felt like they were different from other people, and that they loved someone. Maybe they loved them and they couldn't be with them because the person wasn't free. They were either maybe in another relationship, they were married, or that 12th house person couldn't be with who they felt love for. And there's a pattern of this secret love. And what I realized with the Venus and the 12th house placement is that most of them, and this is what I knew I used to do when in my younger days, I was very idealistic about love, and it got me hurt so many times. So I've lived it. And I realized what it was it's really 12th house people have to learn that they're their own soulmate, and that no one is going to be able to fulfill you and love you the way you want to be loved, because people are human. People are never going to be on this pedestal and perfect. And so sometimes 12th house people have to learn it the hard way, and they typically learn it by falling in love with people that have pain. And I realized that was my pattern. People that I felt like, oh my gosh, it's a past life, it's a connection, I've known them before, are they my soulmate? You know, I used to be like that when I was younger. I was very, very Pisces 12th house. Now I'm more Scorpio. Okay. But back then I was too much, and I got hurt, and I realized it wasn't love that I was feeling. I was feeling their pain, and I wanted to help them. And that's what 12th house people do. They want to help people, and they tend to attract people that have problems, similar to 8th house people, but in a different way, because they're empathic and they take on other people's stuff. And I remember a teacher told me, why are you trying to take on other people's karma? Stop. That's not your karma to take on. And that's what tips I tell 12th house people. This isn't your karma. You can feel bad for someone, you can want to help them or feel, empathy for them, but you don't have to take on their problems and ruin your life and make your life hard. But 12th house people have a tendency to do that. They want to take pain away from others, and they want to take it on themselves. And so they have to learn to have boundaries. They like to escape from the world. Meditation brings comfort. Being in the real world can be painful for 12th house people. That's why I call them angels, because they're like, I don't belong here. It reminds me of the movie with Nicolas Cage, City of Angels, when he fell in love with Meg Ryan. He was an angel, and he gave up his wings to fall to earth to be human. And when he did, everything went to hell. She died, and then he was depressed, and he had all this pain, and he never had any problems. And so it's kind of that feeling like we don't belong here. But we came here. We chose to be here to learn. We chose to come into the earth realm to feel and learn and help other people. And that's what I believe the destiny and mission is of a 12th house person as well, is to help people in some way and to be spiritual, to have a spiritual path. I have a lot of information here you can go back to about dreams. It's such a big thing with the 12th house, and so important to connect with dreams, to have a dream log, to write your dreams down, to do dream work. There's Dr. Arnold Mindell created something called process psychology. And it's, he believed in a dream body. We have a dream body where when we sleep, we travel. And a lot of people believe that when we go to sleep at night, our soul leaves our body and we go to these different realms or these astral places, right? Where we can help people in our dreams. And, the Native Americans, called it dream walkers. We may not always remember that we're traveling or doing these things in our sleep. But if you really want to get to the deeper thing about what your dream symbols mean, there's psychic dreams, and then there's dream symbolic dreams. So most dream symbols are an aspect of you or an aspect of yourself. They represent you or an aspect of yourself. But then there's dreams that have psychic, clairvoyant future messages. And that's what happens to me and many 12th house people I talk to from all over the world. They dream things that happen. And no one can change it, because it's like it was already set in motion, and they get a glimpse of what is coming in the world. And the tsunami, 9/11, I dreamed about all of it. I had no idea what it meant. I hear this from multiple people. Multiple 12th house people dreamed the same type of thing. They knew too, because the collective unconscious, we're all connected, like Carmen talks about, but through the dreams. So I'm not going to bore you with this, but you can look up Arnold Mindell, and there's a whole process. You go back to the dream and you replay the dream in your mind, and you become all of the symbols, the people. How does it feel? And you kind of process it, and you really can get to the bottom of what a dream means, right? And so I try to do this when I can, but I get lazy. Sometimes I know that these things help, but I don't apply them in my own life. So that's something I'm trying to do, is apply these tools and techniques in my own life too. As a 12th house person, I need to. And so deja vu. I used to be like, I've seen this before. I did this before. 12th house people have these experiences where I know this. These clairvoyant, futuristic things, ghosts, angels. So many of them have told me they've seen angels. They've seen the wings. They've seen an angel. They've had their loved ones visit them or stand at the foot of their bed. They have these gut instincts, these intuitions. They're just this inner knowing, right? It's also associated with confinement, monasteries, priests, nuns, rabbis, monks, that kind of energy, because 12th house people need solitude. They have to have time alone to have peace and harmony and to detach and withdraw from the physical world and responsibility, because they really are living in two worlds, the spiritual and the practical world. And they have to learn to be in balance with both of these worlds, right? And one of the stories I didn't share earlier is I almost became a nun, and I'm not even Catholic. And I was going down that route, I was going to be a Carmelite and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not even Catholic. What am I doing? This was in college, I was like a sophomore in college. And I realized I don't want to be a nun. I want to get married and have kids someday. But I really thought I was drawn to that. And I remember I went to Catholic college and I loved learning about Catholicism and angels and saints and, all of that kind of stuff. I just loved it. And so I meet so many people that, have 12th house planets that, wanted to be a priest or wanted to be a Buddhist monk or all these different things. And I feel like for me, I found out that was a past lifetime pattern that I had already done. I've already been Catholic. It's like I knew it. And I love that stuff. And I've always loved it. And so I've already been a nun. I've had a couple hypnosis sessions. So I've already done it. And so some of those things replay in our life, in the present life, that we're not meant to do again, but we have a remembrance. And a lot of 12th house people tell me that. So, we talked about secret love affairs and romanticism. Sometimes they have relationships that are hidden or secret that maybe they can't tell anyone because it's not accepted socially. Okay. And so being attracted to people that they can't have and all these things, this 95% of people have told me they have this pattern of people that I've interviewed with this. Serving others, being drawn to the helping professions, social work, counseling, working with children, all of these things, artists, a lot of musicians, artists. I mean, you can even see public figures that have, planets here. I think, President Biden has, I think he's a 12th houser. So, you can look at charts of famous people. It's so interesting. And it's a whole nother class we could do, but you can start researching and seeing these things. So there's a self-sacrificing lack of boundaries. Again, we talked about, they make great listeners. They can be selfless. They have to learn to balance, the spiritual service with practical service. It's really that Pisces, Virgo, the 12th, 6th house polarity. I find that has saved me. I think what saved me a lot is I have a Virgo stellium and I'm a Virgo rising, and that has helped me be practical, but also be very spiritual and learn to balance those sides of myself. And I had to learn the hard way though, through being hurt. And but we tend to want to help people and because we have been there. And so 12th house people really can walk in other people's shoes and very compassionate, very kind, but they also have a tendency to want to numb themselves and not feel, because they feel everything. They're so open and wide open energy wise. And so sometimes, we hear the negative side of the 12th house, addiction, could be alcoholism. It can be anything that we use to numb ourselves, food, work addiction, computer technology addiction, exercise addiction, sex addiction, gambling addiction. It can be anything, but often it's associated with drugs and alcohol because Neptune rules Pisces, Neptune rules this house. I will say that I see the alcohol pattern quite a bit, and people will tell me, I know that I'm drinking because it relaxes me. I'm drinking to cope. And they never really get addicted to where they can't stop. But these types of behaviors can be detrimental to 12th house people. So they need to know themselves. And if you're counseling them, they need to know, are these patterns balanced? Are they drinking too much? Could it be, is it affecting their life, their health, their work, their relationships? It doesn't mean you have an addiction just because you drink alcohol once in a while or have wine. But you need to really see and see this. And sometimes the addiction pattern isn't with themselves. having an issue, it's with their loved ones or relationship partners. I so many 12th house people tell me that they've dated or been married to people that had alcohol addiction, and they were kind of the caretaker, the codependent person in that relationship, or domestic violence type of relationships, where drugs and alcohol maybe were involved, and they love the person. You know, when you love someone that has addiction, it's really hard to leave them. They call it tough love. I used to be an alcohol addictions counselor and work with families in groups and try to help family members because they really struggle when their partner has addiction. It's very hard on the people that love them and the kids and the family members. So all of that can be 12th house related as well. And you'll hear stories, and 12th house clients share with me about maybe a parent was an alcoholic, or a parent struggled with depression, and then they would drink to cope and things like that. And so it's important for them. That's why it's so important for 12th house people to connect to a higher power and to have that cosmic consciousness. They tend to feel like they're one with everything. They tend to tell me they have these detachment feelings, where it happened to me all the time when I was younger. I'd be in a grocery store. I'd come out of the movie theater and I would feel like I'm not in my body. I would like I'm looking in like an observer. And I would be with a group of people, friends, family at a table, and I'm like, am I really here? Am I here? Is this happening? I mean, these weird feelings will come over me, and I realize I'm not feeling separate from others. I'm actually feeling oneness with everything. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. And a lot of 12th house people tell me that they feel those strange feelings like, am I in my body? That's why grounding exercises are so important for people with both of these houses, to be in their body. I had a psychic tell me once, you're not in your body. You're up here. You're up here. And he's like, you chose to be here. He yelled at me. I was in a mystical bookstore and I thought, whoa. And he said, you chose to be here. You need to be in your body. And at that time, I was never in my body. I remember when I would walk, I would feel like I was floating on air. Like I never felt my feet firmly on the ground. And I guess, and that I always thought everybody was that way. And now that I'm older, I feel like I'm too grounded, because now it does hurt. I told him I don't want to be in my body because it hurts, or in the world, but you have to be in the world. So 12th house people have to learn to be in the world, but not of the world. We got to be here because people need you. People need 12th house people. And they're the angels. They're the angels here. They're here for a special mission. Do they go through hardship? Do they feel lonely? Do they feel isolated? Do they get betrayed? What I used to tell people? Yes, all these things. I always used to say, don't take my kindness as a weakness. And this is one of the things I tell 12th house people. Their kindness they can sometimes feel like they get walked on. They can feel invisible. I have so many people in my groups that tell me that they feel invisible. And I have felt that way so much in my life. I will be in a room and people won't even notice me. Like they'll walk by, oh, I didn't know you were there. Or I'm on a thing and they call on everyone to introduce themselves, but they forget me. And I hear this from so many 12th house people, and it's like, there we are, we're invisible, we're behind the scenes, So it's something with our energy that sometimes people don't notice us, because I think because we are in two worlds. We're our mind, our imagination, we can detach, we can go somewhere. I mean, I'll zone out and I won't hear what my husband says to me. He's like, did you even hear what I just said? I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea. He's like, pay attention. He gets irritated because he's so much earth. And I'm like, I was just in my happy place. You know what I mean? So I zone out all the time and I like it. So you can do it when it's good, and just don't have it. If it starts affecting your life in a negative way, then you need to work on it. But that's what we do. We need that time to escape from stress and our thoughts in the real world. And it's okay to do nothing. I tell 12th house people, it's okay to relax and be lazy and read and meditate and do astrology charts and, do whatever that makes you happy. Create art, listen to music. All of these things help them feel better, because they sometimes feel like they have these secret enemies. I wrote an article about it, that they feel like those they trust the most are the ones that have hurt them the most. Okay. And this is what I hear from many of them. And they really feel that way. They feel like, you know, how could these people hurt me? I love them, right? And all these things. And so these are lessons and patterns that I feel we were meant to learn to make us stronger, of course. And then so I want to touch on you know, when planets, I'm not going to get real deep with each placement, but you will have the slides, and I do have videos on this. When planets transit the 12th house, it's similar to the 8th house. They're going to bring up a lot of hidden things to be healed. Okay. The same is in relationships. Like if you have a synastry chart and people, their planets fall on your 12th house, or your planets fall on their 12th house or 8th house, etc. You're going to challenge each other because it's going to be a very deep, very growth-oriented relationship. And when the planets go through the 12th house, especially Uranus, unexpected things are going to come up. Maybe old hurts, old enemies come back to your life, old wounds, or flashes of intuition. Your psychic abilities could enhance, your spiritual gifts, your intuition. You know, all of these things happen. And when someone's really struggling with emotions and life, and really having a hard time with depression or these different things, I find that a lot of times they have, you know, these outer planets transiting this house, like Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. Pluto through the 12th is a transformative transit. And if it's in your birth chart, your whole life is going to have these rebirths, these strong needs to withdraw and change and escape from the world and get deep and dig deep, right? And so all these, it's energy, that's all it is. And I have some examples here, charts, which you guys can look up real quick. I want to make sure I have time for questions too. Johnny Cash, you know, Moon in Scorpio in the 8th, Sun, Mars, Mercury, all in Pisces in the 12th house. I always thought that was interesting. You know, what he say? They said, you look like you're going to a funeral. And he said, maybe I am, right? He wore all black. And you can kind of research his life. He had the addiction, the struggles. He lost his brother from a tragic accident when he was younger, and he blamed himself. You know, things like that. You can look at a lot of celebrity charts and see different patterns. Marilyn Monroe, there, that Uranus and Pisces, Mars in the 8th house. Her North Node was in the 12th house in Cancer. And then Heath Ledger, you know, he had his Uranus in the 8th house there. He had, you know, Mercury and Mars and Pisces in the 12th house. And you know, these are just some tips for clients that have 12th house planets is, you know, self-care. They need to take care of themselves because they give a lot and they tend to sacrifice themselves for others. They need to learn to say no. It's okay to say no. It doesn't mean they're being mean. They need to learn to speak up for their own needs, for themselves. There could be this martyr victim complex that they need to heal in their life. Sometimes they need to talk to people that understand them, that support them, that have similar interests and hobbies. They need to embrace their psychic abilities and their intuition. They need to trust themselves because they're usually not wrong. So they need to trust themselves, and they need to have strong boundaries so they can protect themselves from the world and from people that maybe, you know, might hurt them, or just so they can remain stable and balanced. And being alone is how I do it. I love to be home. I love home. I like to be in my room here doing my thing and watch my shows, and I love it. Write, you know, do the things that, have them do the things they love, you know, encourage them to. And I was going to end with the video, but you guys can go and find the self-havening videos online. And it's so simple just to teach someone how to do these things. And you do this with both 12th and 8th house people, and it will help them calm and ground. And then they'll be able to express, this is my 8th house group. This is a picture of my 12th house astrology group. These are my published books that I have out with publishers. And then these are my self-published books. This was my first one with all that article I told you with the 8th house. And the others are just on Kindle. They're just little articles I've written and stuff like that. And then Q&A. I want to make sure I got time for Q&A. And these are where you can follow me. I have a YouTube channel, my website, and I'm ready for questions. Yes. So we made it. I could do a whole week. Like this class needs to be a week.
We could do this for 5 more hours and people will love it.
Yeah, I love it. I know it's Saturday and everybody has plans and stuff. So I'm sorry I went over, but I'll stay as long as you guys want to answer questions. So.
And I'm fine with time, and I will apologize in advance. We probably won't go to get to everybody's question because there's so many coming in. But thank you, Carmen, so much for such a wonderfully insightful webinar. And I know so many people, it's such an active chat that you have resonated with so many people. And I think everybody here today is here for a reason because of what you've put together. So thank you so much. As we have so many questions, I'm going to try and condense some of them down. So there were many questions regarding the nodes in the 12th and the 8th. So how would you regard the nodes in the 8th and 12th houses?
Oh, yes. So important. When your north node or south node is in the 8th or 12th, it's an important thing. So I see often people with the south node in the 8th, it's in the north node in the 2nd. It's like they're a phoenix. They've already had tons of change in their past lifetimes. They've already, experienced death and rebirths. They kind of come in with this spiritual knowledge about death and life and these deep things, but they're learning they don't have to have crisis all the time, because that's one thing with the 8th house. There's a lot of crisis situations that come into the life where you have to survive. And I had several others I did not share here that I've been through that were like, I used to do crisis intervention on suicide hotline. I've had to take guns from people, knives from people. That kind of thing is that 8th house people are able to react and act in a crisis, and they can be very powerful to help people when there's something really traumatic that happens. They have that ability, that gift. So you bring that into this life, but you're learning it's okay to have stability, comfort, calmness, money, possessions, because you didn't really have that stuff. It's like you were in survival mode. And now you're learning I can eat, I can have a roof over my head, I can work, I can be normal and do normal things. I don't have to sacrifice, so I find that they have a hard time having possessions and having money and having success, because they're not used to that feeling. So it's like with the nodes, we're balancing these nodes. We're not giving it up. You've already mastered being an 8th houser. You have to embrace being a 2nd houser, being a Taurus. So you have that Scorpio mastery, but you got to balance your Taurus and your Scorpio. And that's what I find. And my north node is Scorpio. My south node is Taurus, but they're not in those houses, but the energy's similar. And so I had to give up being a Taurus, which would be a north node, 8th house. I have to be a Scorpio and give up my need for comfort, stability. I don't like change. I want things to be easy. I don't want crisis. And I had to be a Scorpio, and that's what I'm doing this life. I'm being a Scorpio, and I have to. And I'm a 3rd house north node, so I do it through teaching and talking about all these things. That's what I'm doing and writing. But I'm always like, every day when you wake up, you should ask yourself, how can I be a north node 8th house person? What do I need to do? Or how do I be a north node 2nd house person? Read everything you can about the 2nd house Taurus, and then the 8th house Scorpio is my recommendation. And then the sign that it's in, of course, too. Master that sign, because that's why you're here. And then as you get older and you get out of your 2nd Saturn return, it's going to be easier reaching your soul mission, because you'll know what it is instead of kicking and screaming like I used to do. I used to say, I'm never going to be a Scorpio. How am I ever going to do this? And when I knew my chart, I'm like, this sucks. Like it's it's me. Like, I don't want to be a Scorpio energy. But now I feel like I naturally got there because of life experience. Now I'm like, I'm so different than I was in my younger days. And so now I wake up, what do I have to do to be a Scorpio? How would a Scorpio answer this email? How would a Scorpio address somebody that just abused me or put me down in public? Everything, instead of what did my Taurus do? And think about that. And once you embrace the north node, I find, I have so many people that have that north node in the 8th or south node in the 8th, and you're going to have the similar energies of that 8th house Taurus. Yeah, Jan Spiller's book's wonderful, Astrology for the Soul. That helped me so much with embracing this. And I remember when I had something really bad happen in my personal life, in my family. I had something really traumatic happen. I'm not gonna share it publicly. There's reasons, but when it happened, I remember I really had a hard time healing from it. And I was running and I was listening to music, and I was like, why did this happen? Why this is, and in my head, how else am I going to make you a Scorpio? And I just started laughing, because I'm like, I'm not only my 8th houser, but my north node is stinking Scorpio, right? And it's like, yeah, I have to have pain. I had to go through these things, and I'm going to make it through because we're resilient. You know, Phoenix is, I mean, 8th house people are so resilient, and so are 12th house people. They both are. And but 8th housers, you know, and 12th housers, they heal through helping others. That's why they're here, is to help other people.
And that's another thing that seems to resonate with a lot of people here today, is that heavy 8th or 12th house placements. A lot of people will come out of the blue and just tell the person with the heavy 8th or the 12th their secrets and divulge, and that seems to resonate with a lot of people here today.
Oh my gosh, guys. Yeah, because I remember, and you probably feel this way, those that wrote in the chat, I mean, I'm a therapist in my normal job, but coworkers, I remember they would come in my office and mortal enemies would cross paths in my office, and I knew that they didn't get along, but everybody would come tell me all the secrets. I don't, you know, what's going on. And I never shared because I was very loyal, and I can keep a secret. That's 8th house or two. And, but I would tell people, before you tell me, are you sure you want me to know? Because what would happen is people tend to overshare with 8th and 12th house people. And they tell you these very vulnerable things, but then they realize what they did. And then they back up from you. And then we feel betrayed, or like we're being rejected by them. Sometimes this is what happens, because like, well, why are they not even talking to me now? They're avoiding me. And I learned that early, and so I'll say, hey, before you tell me, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable around me after you tell me. Like, I'm not going to judge you. I totally accept anything you say. And I still care about you as a person. I'm not going to judge you, but don't tell me if you're going to push me away and feel uncomfortable. I would start saying that to people. And then they still would tell me, you know, everything. And sometimes I just went to the grocery store like a week ago, and a lady was alone, and I was trying to get something in the aisle. She started crying and started telling me her son had cancer. And I was in the aisle for 2 hours talking to this lady, total stranger. And I just listened the whole time. And I hadn't had that happen in a while. And I left, and I knew I was meant to be there. And she was telling me her whole life story. She was a widow. Her son had cancer. She was abused as a child. I mean, everything. And I just listened, and I asked her name, and it is, yeah, it's like they dump and then they disappear sometimes. Like, they just share everything, because what it is, guys, it's energy. The 12th and 8th house energy is like a light, like a candle, and people see you flickering, and they're like, and if they're low, if they're rock bottom and they're in a dark place, they're drawn to you, and they express it out. And then they may not have the strength to keep up talking to us, and may not have the ability to be around us, because guess what? Our energy makes them face their problems. It makes them heal. So I find that sometimes I got Pluto in the 1st house. So I think in my Mercury, I feel like people either love me or hate me. And I feel like people are either really drawn to me, or they avoid me. And sometimes I know when people are uncomfortable around me, I don't have to say or do anything. It's our energy. And that's what a lot of 8th and 12th house people tell me. It's like, I didn't do anything, but yeah, I'm nice. Like, why are they uncomfortable around me? And I'm so, you know, and I'm like, it's not you, it's your energy. It's nothing that you've done. Love me or hate me. It's that 8th house is the same kind of energy. People are really drawn, or they don't like me at all. And most people like me, but I have some people that I feel like are enemy. Like I mean, I've been nice, but then they just, and I'm like, you know what? You can get one positive comment on a book or whatever, and then you can get like, or 50,000 comments positive and one bad one. And
that will stay with you.
Yeah, my Virgo's like, why did they not like my book? Why did they say something mean? I'll get mean emails from people I don't even know. And I've had to learn to have a thick skin, because I have to be a Scorpio North Node. I can't care. I got to learn to cut off the negative and move on and focus on the people that appreciate me and that are positive in my life. And I had to do that. And does it hurt? Yes. Do I have tears when I get a negative email, or, you know, they don't like me, or they don't like my research or what I'm doing? Oh, well, because I'm doing this to help people, because I've lived these houses. You know, I had a book comment recently on my Phoenix is Angels book on Amazon, and it hurt my feelings real bad. And I laughed, though, because the person said, you know, I live this stuff, she doesn't, and she just wrote, you know, it was something like that. And I'm like, lady, you don't even know me. Like, there's things I've never shared that aren't in my books that I've been through. And so I just share that with my clients, you know, when I'm one-on-one with them, if I need to. to validate things for them. And so they know they're not alone. But the thing is, people aren't going to always they're not always going to like 8th and 12th house people. They're going to be a little bit more, withdrawn. They might be.
Sounds like a double-edged sword to
Yeah,
a lot of degrees.
because you're vulnerable, your most vulnerable parts of yourself, people feel that 8th and 12th house people can see through them, which we can. I'll know. I can just sense, and I don't say nothing until if they come to me. I've had people come, usually at work or through all the jobs I've had, they'll come in my office and they're like, I don't know what it is, but I want to tell you something I never told anyone my whole life. And they'll tell me how they were abused by someone they trusted. And I just listen. And I think that's one of the reasons I ended up going into sexual assault response and prevention. So, I've been doing that for a long time and helping survivors heal from those things. And I started seeing the patterns of the 8th house energy, Scorpio, in their charts, right? And in my normal job in the real world. So, but yes,
Wonderful.
any other questions?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those experiences, and I think it really does resonate for everybody who's here today. Okay, into other questions. So to condense other questions, we've had a lot in terms of empty houses. So would you look maybe to the rule of the empty houses, the 8th and the 12th? How would you go about that?
Yes. So what I find is, if a house is empty, we always want to look at what sign is on the cusp of the 8th or on the cusp of the 12th. And then, and we also want to look at, like you said, the ruler, where's Pluto, where's Neptune, and things like that, because you can see where some of those patterns might play out, right? Like I got Neptune in my 3rd house and it's square Venus in my 12th house. And so you'll have different experiences based on that. But what I find is whatever sign is on the 8th house specifically, this is just something I'm going to share. I find that energy is the energy that often wounds us. Okay. And so for instance, I have Aries on that house. Most of the greatest pain I've had is from people that were either a lot of Aries energy, and it was through relationships, right? That I love these people or whatever. And I was totally devastated by it, right? Or they just had Aries traits. You know what I mean? That's where the wound came, whether it was from selfishness or whatever, the negative side of that sign on that house. And then with the 12th house sign, I find that, we would often attract people with that energy to help, and so, yes, it's not a bad thing not to have planets in the 8th or 12th, not everyone's going to have planets there, but you do have a Pluto and you have a Neptune and you have Scorpio and Pisces in your chart somewhere. And so that's why I talk about, you got to kind of look at all those, the both energies, in the chart, but the sign on the cusp is important. And then what planets transit through those houses are also important, because it's going to affect you the same way it would with a natal Pluto. When Pluto's going through the 8th, you're going to experience the same kind of energy, because it's all energy. And same when Neptune is transiting any area of life, it's going to be that 12th house hidden kind of secret. Pluto going through your 4th house. When Pluto transit my 4th house, I lost 4 people close to me. My grandmother, my other grandmother. I had a friend that was killed in a car accident. I had a friend that was hiking and died of a heart attack, all these things. And I moved multiple times, lots of change with my job. So I find we always want to look to the opposite house too, that Pluto, if Pluto's in the 2nd, you need to look to the 8th. If Pluto's in the 4th, you need to look to the 10th, because there's going to be a lot of changes in both those houses. That balance of the polarity of the house is important too.
Wonderful, thank you. And in a sense of fairness, I'm going to try and go through this in the chronological order. So there's a question here, wondering if 12th house placements have a specific relationship with projection or being projected upon. Any thoughts on that? Oh,
definitely. This comes up a lot in my group, that I kind of call it like we're mirrors. It's like it's a reflective displacement. You see the image in psychology where the husband yells at the wife yells at the kid hits the dog, and the dog bites the mailman. It's like that kind of that displacement thing in psychology. A lot of people tend to project their anger, their hurt, their problems onto 12th house people. And that's why it hurts them greatly, because it's nothing that they do. It's their energy, because their energy is so wide open. And so it's like healing, compassionate, kind of energy, right? Spiritual kind of energy. And then they can withdraw and they can feel wounded and hurt. And then they want to escape. They want to withdraw from people. And I've been like that. The greatest thing in my life that I say I'm afraid of is other people. And that's something I had to learn to get over, because I got to go in the world. I have to deal with people. And it can be hard because of being hurt. And so now I know, okay, I mean, I've had people for no reason completely scream and yell at me on the phone and blame me for something that I know in my heart, I didn't do anything right. And I felt bad for them, because that's a 12th houser. But did I cry? Did I get upset? Did my Aries 8th house come out and I vent and maybe curse a little bit with my friend? Yeah. But other than that, deep down, I felt compassion for them, because I knew this is them. There's something going on in their life that they're overwhelmed, and they're projecting it onto me, and they don't always, even see they're doing it. And so what I have to say is 8th and 12th house people, we often have to be the bigger person in relationships. We have to be the one that is more wise and more responsible and more, looking at things from a psychological point of view and kind of knowing, okay, I didn't do anything wrong. So I'm just going to, and now I had to, I think 12th house people struggle with this because they have a hard time standing up for themselves. 8th house people kind of have that fire. Once they get angry enough, they will stand up and speak up, if somebody's really doing something. That's what saves me is my 8th house. But my 12th house, I used to let people bully me. I remember when I was growing up, oh my gosh, in high school, I used to cry. If someone cried, I cried. If someone could bully me, and I would cry. Yeah, Aries moon saves me too, Damla. I mean, and I never felt my Aries 8th house energy at all until I got older. I'd say probably after my Saturn return, my first one. I haven't had my second one yet, but that's when I started feeling my Aries, because I was so 12th house. I had no protection, and I used to get hurt so much, and I realized in the bullying, and I look back and I would, I'm like, what it was projection. People would project on me. And sometimes people think, well, oh, you're too nice. They tell me you're too nice. And don't you ever get angry? And I never felt anger. I remember as a 12th house son, I didn't even know what anger was. I remember thinking, is it weird that I don't get mad? When I was younger, even in my early 20s, I'm like, why don't I get mad? Well, now guys, my Aries is out. My 8th house opened up when I had the Uranus transit through there too, but I'm more 8th house Aries than I am probably 12th house now in my life. And I try to balance both. And I do miss being the old me, because the old me was so peaceful. The new me reacts and I get mad, but I'm just honest, and I'm the only one that speaks up at work and things like that, and no one else will say it, and I'll say it, and it's deep stuff that nobody wants to deal with, problems, and they're all thanking me. I agree, but no one wants to say it. And that didn't used to be me. I used to be the one that was shy, behind the scenes, quiet, and didn't want to make anyone mad, didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. That's 12th house. So it's balancing your chart, balancing your nature, your houses, and it all comes into play,
I think a lot of what you're saying is certainly resonating for everybody here. And it kind of brings to another question. What would you constitute as, in quotes, an 8th house or a 12th house person? Is that a number of planets? Would it be more personal planets? Or how would you see generational planets in there as well? So is there a number involved, or what would be your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes I'll say, like, the way I see it, sun or moon in either one, very powerful, the personal planets. 3 or more, a stellium, a node, having the node there, having the ruler there. That, and I'll say you're a Phoenix, you're an angel, when I look at people's charts, and it doesn't mean you have to have a ton of planets in those houses, but there's something there that is related.
Wonderful.
And
this is
strong Neptune. Yeah. All that. Like if Neptune's conjunct your ascendant, Pluto's conjunct your ascendant, you don't have any 8th or 12th planets. You're going to be very Plutonian, very Phoenixy, or you're going to be in the angel Neptune mystical vibe if it's conjunct the rising, things like that.
Wonderful. Last couple of questions, because I know we're running, but I absolutely love
Oh,
what
yeah.
you're discussing here. So this has come up a few times in terms of what house between the 8th and the 12th would you signify as entity attachment or possession? I know it's kind of a question, but I know you talked before about seeing lights at the age of 16. So the houses in between seeing maybe the spirit world or having maybe other worldly experiences and those kind of things. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but trying to condense these questions down.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good one. It's really hard to split for me the 8th and 12th. To me, they're so similar. They're so similar in things like the secrets, the hidden, but it's a different kind of energy. That's all. Like 8th house, I find, like if you want to believe in possession, I have a lot of 8th house people that have seen dark presences or dark entities. Then, or I woke up one night, I had a dark, like a dark cloud. I felt like somebody was on my chest. They call it the hag effect. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move, and then I like, and it was like I felt someone in the room. And this was in college. Long story, it was a girl in class's mother had died, and she had attached to me. This is the first time, probably the most intense experience I've ever had, honestly. Now, the orb was more like, I was afraid, but that's more mystical 12th house. You see these white orbs, but some people, I'm going to say I'm not going to say it is my experience, but I've had others where they wake up and they see someone that looks angry standing at the side of their bed. And they're like in that in-between state where they scream and all that. And then they wake up. So I think it's important. Do I believe in possession? I believe it's possible. I believe the Catholic Church has research and things like that, but I try not to go to the dark side with any of this stuff. I try to focus on the positive, but I think it has to do with boundaries and being careful. I think 8th and 12th house people do have to be careful what kind of energy and what kind of things they're learning, because they will open up. The more we learn and the more we do these things, we can open up like that. And it's like, yeah, it's like a sleep paralysis. In Canada, they call it the hag effect. And I think what happens to me is, it's like, I do believe we leave our body when we sleep. And I believe that I'm awake, but I'm not. I'm awake in my bed, and I'm in my bed, and I know I'm awake. I'm not dreaming, but I'm not really awake. And I've had this happen, and I'll look and someone's there, and I scream. And I'll move across the bed, and my husband's like, what? And I'll wake him up. I'm like, my heart's pounding out my chest, and I'm breathing like somebody was standing there. And he's like, and he thinks you're crazy. Just go, go back to sleep. And one night, and I believe this can happen with people that are alive. Okay. I always thought these are souls that I don't know, whatever. I've had a couple times where I woke up and had the same thing in my bed, and my mother was glowing, standing next to my bed. And my mother is very much alive. And when that happened, I couldn't move. And then I was back in my body, and then my heart was beating out, and I started crying. I said, my mother was at my bed. And then something would happen. Like the next day I called her, and she seemed okay until later. And then she called me upset about something pretty big in the family. So there were always a reason, but it's not always a bad thing, I guess I'm saying. But I do know that, your intentions, keep your mind pure, your intentions try to protect your energy. Because I've heard a lot of stories from people with 12th and 8th house that had some really strange experiences with entities or ghosts or things like that. And so just, I do believe that I'm open-minded. I'm not an expert in all that stuff, but I do have a lot of people share with me many, many stories. And I believe there's nothing that surprises me. UFOs, aliens. I've had people tell me they've been abducted by aliens. Okay. 8th house, 12th housers. They've seen UFOs. I saw a UFO in 1995 in the sky. I had my friend with me. Have I ever seen a green little man? No, but I'm not going to say they're not out there. And so I'm very open-minded, and
it's a big universe.
Yes. And I've had people that have been hypnotized, that have remembered being abducted by aliens, or remember being an alien, during hypnosis, that they were on another planet. I mean, I believe, and I'm open-minded, because there's so much we don't know about the world and the spiritual realms.
Absolutely wonderful. I could have this conversation for hours, but unfortunately we're going to have to wrap up soon. And I profusely apologize for everybody. I'm not be able to get to all of these questions. So I'd like to wrap up with, do you have any upcoming courses or lectures, anything coming up?
Yes. I'm gonna start offering For those that are, if you're in my 12th and 8th house groups, please, if you're not, please join. Let me put in there that you were on this webinar, so I'll know, because I don't let everybody in. I kind of screen if they have to answer questions and stuff.
And I think the Facebook group, Laurie, great, fantastically, has put it in the chat box. So I think you can all click on that link and join your Facebook group. Is that correct?
Yes.
I found the 8th house group, but I didn't find the 12th. Would you give me the name again, and I'll find the link and pop it in?
I think it's just the 12th astrological house, and I think it's with the number 12, I believe.
Okay, I'll go in search of it.
Yeah, and I'm going to start, if anyone's interested, you can contact me through my website, carmenturnershot.com, go to contact. I'm wanting to start I don't want to say a support group, but like a support spiritual learning group for 8th house people, and then one for 12th house people, where we meet like once a month and we share our personal spiritual stories. You know, like I'll lead it, and then we'll share on Zoom or wherever. And then I do have classes that I do teach. I'm going to start one next year. But I do also have a radio show, Deep Soul Divers Astrology, that I'm trying to market, and anyone can call in at any time on my show and ask me questions. I mean, about a placement. I did a show just about the 12th house, and I had a ton of callers, and we had a great time. And I'm going to do the same for the 8th house. And so you know, it's a second and fourth Saturday of the month at 12 p.m. Central on BBS Radio, and I mark it on Instagram, on all my pages, and you'll have to follow me to see. But I had a show today at noon, and we talked about Venus and love and relationships, and it live streams into my YouTube, my Facebook group, and my Facebook page, and things like that. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. So everyone still watching here, you're going to have to go and check that out. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful.
And you want me to tell them about the book thing we're going to do? Oh,
sure. Go ahead. Yep, absolutely.
So for those of you that are here, appreciate you joining. Whoever's left, they're going to do a random draw of 4 names for 4 attendees, and whoever gets picked will get either a copy of my Fallen Angels book or a free copy of my Phoenixes and Angels book that I will mail to you. Or if you're overseas, international, because shipping is crazy, I'm going to try to work out if I can to get you a Kindle copy, okay, of either one of these. And so you'll be contacted by me once they give me your name. We'll need your email and all that, and I'll write you personally. I'll sign the book, and I'll send it to you in the mail.
That's such a beautiful touch. Thank you so much, and I'm sure they'll be excited for that to come through.
Thank you, everyone. So
absolutely
nice.
Wonderful. And I think, Laurie, did we get that link in there before we wrap up?
Yeah, I found the 12th house and I popped it in, but the 8th house I had popped in. We had a lot of chats.
I tell what we can do as well. We can take those links. So in the next couple of days, when we work on the editing of this video and put it on YouTube, I'll include the links in the description box to comment all these Facebook groups, the 8th and the 12th. So you can all go in there and check them out. And I'll pin it in the comments as well. So if you look underneath the video, you'll see comments, and it should be pinned, and you can find it through there as well.
Everyone, you're so sweet. Everyone's so nice. Thank you guys so much for joining. And
so many hearts coming through. It's kind of flooding the page.
I love it.
Hearts and claps and party.
I love it. I was so nervous. You know, I'm a Virgo, so I get real nervous, but I love to teach and I love to talk and share. So I hope you guys liked it and resonated with it and validated some of your own experiences. I mean, that's why I do this. So you know you're not alone, and you're not crazy. You have spiritual abilities and gifts, and embrace those. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much. I wish this could go on for another 6 hours, but alas, we have to wrap up. So thank you everybody for coming. Again, just to reiterate, this will be posted on our YouTube channel. Go check that out in the next couple of days. And then you can, as Laurie has said before, you could pause the video and take any screenshots that you need. Maybe lastly, Carmen, in terms of sending slides, you still want to do that? How would that go about?
Yeah, I can send you these slides, and definitely you can share them with the whole group, because then they can go to the videos that we didn't get to, you know, and some of the self-having techniques and things like that.
Yeah, Carmen and I will coordinate that sometime this week, and I'll get the slides or at least a link to the slides out to everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Well, great. Again, thank you, Carmen, so much. Beautifully insightful. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Again, I apologize. We couldn't get to there were so many questions. We couldn't get to all of them. So you can find the groups and have a chin wag amongst those. So thank you all for attending, and we'll see you with the next webinar next week. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.